The day my wife Victoria was appointed CEO, I secretly rushed back from overseas with a $600 million deal in hand, intending to surprise her. Instead, I watched as she officially announced that her white Moonlight crush, Ethan, was the company's sole new board director. She held Ethan's hand, her eyes brimming with tears as she thanked him for his years of companionship and support. When I appeared, everyone turned to me with expressions eager for a spectacle. But Victoria's face instantly turned cold. "Weren't you on a business trip abroad? You can't even handle a small task like that. How can I possibly trust you to manage this company?" She allowed Ethan to mock and provoke me, and even planned to demote me to a regular employee. I just smiled and clapped, magnanimously handing the massive contract over to Ethan. They didn't know that I was the company's sole lifeline. Without me, none of our investors would back Victoria anymore. Chapter 1. I stared in disbelief at the two people holding hands tightly in the distance. The flight of over 10 hours had left me dizzy and disoriented. I almost thought I was hallucinating.
Isn't Sincere Clark on a business trip overseas?
Coming back now is just asking for humiliation, isn't it? He's a company elder after all. To have his position snatched by some newcomer who just dropped in.
This is going to be a good show.
The whispers of my former colleagues buzzed in my ears, accompanied by probing stares from all directions. Ethan Reed's face wore a triumphant smirk as he slowly walked up to me. "Sincere, when did you get back? You should have let us know so we could have thrown a welcome party for you. But from the looks of it, did that overseas deal fall through? What a shame. But don't worry," he added. "Vicky and I won't blame you." I slapped his hand off my shoulder. His expression flickered, and his tone turned aggrieved. "Are you upset with me for taking the position that should have been yours? I'll give it back to you. I just hope this doesn't hurt the harmony between us." As he spoke, he made a show of removing the employee badge from his chest. Victoria Smith, who had been silent until now, rushed over and grabbed his hand. "Ethan, what are you doing? What right does a little clerk have to interfere in the company's personnel decisions?"
Then Victoria turned to me.
"The deal fell through, and you still have the nerve to come back? I told you not to go in the first place. You just had to show off and fly abroad, and now you've ruined our most important client relationship. And you still have the audacity to ask for a director's position?" Listening to her indiscriminate accusations, I found it almost laughable. She was the one who had said the overseas deal was crucial but difficult, and that she couldn't trust anyone else with it. That was why I had volunteered. Before I left, she promised me that my position in the company would remain secure, whether the deal succeeded or not. She said that when I returned, she would promote me to a board director, and we would protect our business together, side by side. And what did I return to? Ethan Reed, a graduate from some overseas diploma mill, had been invited into the company from a completely different industry. He never participated in any major projects, spending his days swaggering around, giving orders, and relying on his personal relationship with Victoria to keep everyone from speaking out. Whenever it was time to assign blame, he would use his silver-tongued lies to convince Victoria that he was the innocent victim. In contrast, my silent hard work, day in and day out, had only earned me everyone's contempt. Just like now. Ethan explained in a small voice. I was just worried that others wouldn't be convinced. He stood behind Victoria, his hands clasped nervously in front of him, looking for all the world like he'd suffered a great injustice. Victoria's brow furrowed. "Anyone who isn't convinced can get out," she said coldly. "And Sincere, don't you forget, I am the CEO of this company. I say he's the director, so he's the director. What right do you have to point fingers?" Her words silenced the room. Everyone was afraid of losing their jobs. I stared at the serious expression on her face and suddenly broke into a smile. When she said she wanted to start a business, I was willing to break ties with my family to give her all my savings. When we were swindled by a factory and lost $50,000, I was the one who got on my knees and begged our investors for an extension. Later, when the company was on the right track, I was the one who stayed up all night writing proposals and visiting factories. I poured all my heart and soul into this company. I didn't ask for any reward, only to see Victoria happy. And now, she was telling me I had no right to point fingers. I nodded and took 2 steps forward. Victoria looked nervous. Her eyes widened as she stared at me. "What are you doing? Are you going to hit someone in broad daylight?" I pulled out the massive contract I had worked so hard to secure. "In that case, I'll leave. I hope the company will thrive and prosper under your leadership." I practically gritted my teeth as I said those last few words. Ethan took the contract from my hand and looked it over several times. "How is this possible?" Victoria stared at me, her face pale, her lips moving as if she wanted to say something. The colleagues who were watching the show craned their necks, none of them having expected that I had actually landed that incredibly difficult overseas deal. But in the next second, Ethan threw the contract at me. "Sincere, do you really think we're that naive and easy to fool? You think you can take credit by faking a contract? If you really sealed a deal this big, why haven't they contacted us yet? And why is there no word from the factory?" They didn't know. This was supposed to be a surprise for Victoria, which is why I had asked the other party to keep it quiet for the time being. Victoria and I had been secretly married for 5 years. Today was our wedding anniversary. But on this incredibly meaningful day, she denied our relationship and allowed her first love, her white Moonlight, to question and trample on me. "So Sincere, have you given up hope now?" I lowered my eyes, and under everyone's gaze, I picked up the contract from the floor. Then, in front of them all, I tore it to shreds. I turned to leave, but Victoria called out to me. She ran up and grabbed my hand. For a fleeting moment, I thought she wanted me to stay. After all, in all our previous arguments, she had never been the one to back down. But this time was different. Yet, the ice in her eyes hadn't thawed in the slightest. She pursed her lips and said, "Sincere, I never thought you'd have the nerve to forge a contract. For that alone, I could call the police and have you arrested right now, but considering all you've done for the company, I'll let this slide. Starting today, you're transferred to the marketing department. As for Ethan being a director, my decision is final. I found it hilarious. No thank you. I quit. If it hadn't been for Victoria, I would never have stayed in this small company for 5 years. Since there was no longer a place for me here, why should I stay and beg?" I turned and walked out of the company. Staring at the gloomy sky, I took out my phone and made a call home. "Dad, I lost the bet. I'll be home tomorrow." Chapter 2. No one knew that I was the second son of the wealthiest man in the country. When I first met Victoria, I had hinted at my identity, but she just thought I was joking. Besides, my older brother was very famous, so almost no one knew that the richest family actually had 2 sons. Later, to help Victoria start her business, I had a falling out with my family. It wasn't until after we were married that my parents took the initiative to find me. We made a bet. The bet was that Victoria could successfully build her business within 5 years, and that our relationship would remain as strong as ever. At the time, I was full of confidence, certain it was a bet I couldn't lose. Looking back now, I just feel like I wasted 5 years of my life. I went back to our apartment to pack. I accidentally knocked over a photo frame on the table. Looking at the 2 people in the picture, gazing happily at each other, a wave of bitterness washed over me. Ever since Ethan Reed had returned to the country, my relationship with Victoria had completely changed. Our rare moments alone were constantly interrupted by Ethan, so many times I'd lost count. I took out a lighter and watched as the flame slowly consumed the photograph in my hand. A strange sense of calm settled over me. Perhaps the love between Victoria and me, much like this photo, had already turned to ash. After packing my suitcase, I wrote a resignation letter. Just as I finished, I saw a new social media post from Ethan. The video was shot in a private dining room at a restaurant. He and Victoria were linking arms to drink wine. Victoria seemed to have had a lot to drink. Her cheeks flushed as she leaned against his chest. Colleagues around them were cheering, shouting, "Kiss, kiss." Ethan wrapped his arms around her waist, smiled, and leaned in towards her lips. The video ended there. I calmly liked the post and turned off my phone. I was used to it. This wasn't the first time Ethan had done something like this. On my birthday, he'd feigned a headache to call Victoria away, only to post pictures of them setting off fireworks together. On New Year's Eve, at the stroke of midnight, he'd claimed there was a power outage at his place and he was scared, so Victoria went to keep him company. He then sent me a picture of their candlelit dinner. At first, I would get angry, even threatening to forbid Victoria from leaving, but it only ever resulted in her impatient reprimands. After a while, I guess I just went numb. Just as I placed the resignation letter in my bag, Victoria's call came through. I rejected it several times, but she kept calling, relentlessly, as if determined to get through to me. I finally answered, and her drunken voice came through the line. "I've had too much to drink. Come pick me up at the Peace Hotel." Her entitled tone was laughable. I could faintly hear Ethan's voice in the background, so I replied, "Isn't there someone else perfectly willing to take you home? Why call me?" Victoria sighed, her voice tinged with annoyance. "Ethan's post was just for fun. What's with the sarcastic tone? Why are you being so petty? He feels terrible about it now. You should come over and apologize to him, and we'll let this go. If you keep targeting him like this, do you believe I'll divorce you?" I let out a cold laugh. "Then let's get a divorce." There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear Victoria's breathing suddenly become heavy. Then I clearly heard the sound of kissing, followed by Ethan's husky voice. "Vicky, it was my fault. I shouldn't have posted that. It seems there's really no place for me in this country. I'll go pack my things and leave now." Victoria's voice came back on the line. "Don't you threaten me, Sincere. You're the one who's in the wrong, and you're acting like you're justified. You need to do some serious self-reflection with that." She hung up. Without a moment's hesitation, I dialed my lawyer's number. "Draft divorce papers for me, as soon as possible." Chapter 3. After taking care of everything, I fell into a deep sleep on the bed. In a daze, I felt a pair of hands wrap around me from behind, their touch roaming over my chest. I jolted awake, startled, to find Victoria had returned. She reeked of alcohol and snuggled into my arms like a child. "Today is our anniversary." I remembered. "I wasn't trying to target you at the office today, but everyone was watching. You have to consider my position. I know you were just angry when you said you'd quit. I know I was wrong, that's why I came home right away. We built this company together. Can you really bear to leave it, to leave me?" An unfamiliar cologne wafted into my nose. A wave of nausea hit me, and I forcefully pushed her away, sitting up in bed. Victoria froze for a moment, her eyes filled with hurt. "Are you still angry?" She pulled a ring out of her pocket and tried to put it on my finger. "This is a gift I picked out especially for you. I didn't even make a big deal about you forging the contract. Why are you still being so difficult? Ethan can be a bit careless sometimes, but his family is in the overseas trade business. He'll be a great help to our company's future. I'm doing this for the company and for our future. Can't you try to understand?" I looked at the ring in her hand and remembered seeing an identical one on Ethan's finger earlier that day. I gave a non-committal M&M. Victoria never explained her decisions to me, but today she had uncharacteristically said so much. I didn't know if she was genuinely drunk or if she was plotting something else. I got out of bed from the other side, intending to take a blanket and sleep in the guest room. Victoria stood at the door, blocking my way. "I remember you have a list of client resources. Could you organize it and give it to Ethan? He can help share your workload from now on." My steps faltered. So that was the real reason for her sudden attentiveness. I shook her hand off, my voice cold. "Isn't he supposed to be so capable? A company director needing a little clerk to hand over resources? Aren't you afraid of becoming a laughingstock?" Victoria's face turned ugly. "Sincere, everything you have now the company gave you. I can take it all away at any time, be my guest." With that, I closed the guest room door, shutting her voice out completely. The next morning, I expected Victoria to have already left for the office. Instead, I found her sitting at the dining table with a share transfer agreement next to her. I remembered her saying last night that she had another surprise for our anniversary, and my heart clenched. Victoria had mentioned before that since we founded the company together, the shares should be split equally between us. But because of our secret marriage, I was worried about arousing suspicion among our colleagues, so I had let her hold my half of the shares for me. As if sensing my strange mood, she stuffed the share transfer agreement into her bag, saying awkwardly, "It's not for you." I watched her grab her bag and walk out the door, knowing she was deliberately trying to provoke me, but I didn't care anymore. I changed my clothes, grabbed my resignation letter, and drove to the office. As soon as I entered, I heard everyone gathered around Ethan, showering him with praise. "Should we be calling you Mr. Reed, the boss, now?" This just shows how amazing Ethan is. It's been less than a month, and he's already won over both the CEO and the company. Seeing me walk in, the marketing manager, Mark Thompson, was the first to bark orders at me. "Sincere, you're half an hour late and you completely disappeared during the team building event last night without a word. You have no discipline at all. Write a 5,000-word report on your misconduct and have it on my desk." By the end of the day, I glanced at him coolly. He had been the most enthusiastic sycophant fawning over Ethan just moments ago. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that you are now a junior employee in the marketing department, and I am your superior. If you dare to disobey me, believe me, I'll have Mr. Reed fire you." Ethan just smiled and waved his hand dismissively. "We're all in the same department, no need to be so aggressive. Sincere just got back from his trip. He's probably still jet-lagged. We should be considerate." Even though the deal didn't go through, he still put in the effort. Several colleagues behind him snickered into their hands. Ethan walked over and patted my shoulder. As he turned, he knocked over a cup of water on the desk. Hot water instantly spilled onto my laptop, which contained all of the company's client resources. Before I could say anything, Victoria appeared at the office doorway, her gaze sweeping sternly across the room. "Does nobody have work to do? What are you all doing crowded around here?" The colleagues scattered like birds. Ethan immediately picked up my laptop and bent down to wipe the water from the desk. "I'm so sorry, Sincere. I didn't do it on purpose. You have backups of everything in here, right?" Seeing his hand reddened by the hot water, Victoria rushed over, full of concern, and grabbed it. She glanced at the mess on my desk. "You can't even look after your own computer. What right do you have to get angry at others?" My silence completely ignited her fury. She snatched the laptop from my hands and smashed it on the floor. "Sincere, who are you putting on this miserable face for?" "Insubordination, willfully damaging company property. I see you really don't want to work here anymore, do you?" As her words fell, I pulled out my resignation letter and threw it at her. "You're right. As of today, I officially resign." Chapter 4. At my words, the colleagues who had been watching the spectacle stared with wide eyes. It seemed no one had expected that I, the old workhorse who never complained, would have such a backbone. A colleague I was on good terms with whispered a word of caution. "Sincere, don't be rash. It's hard to find a job at the end of the year. Even though you've been demoted, with your experience, getting promoted again would be easy." Miss Smith was just speaking in the heat of the moment. "Don't take it to heart. Just apologize to Ethan, and this will all blow over." I met Victoria's shocked gaze. "I'm not being rash. I already tendered my resignation yesterday. Today, I'm here to complete the official process." Ethan's eyes were filled with triumph. He clearly saw himself as the ultimate victor. But Victoria, standing before him, wore a grave expression. She clutched the resignation letter, her voice laced with disbelief. "Sincere, do you know what resigning now means? My patience has its limits. I'm giving you one last chance. Think it over carefully before you answer me." I just looked at her, my face devoid of expression. I had never been so clear-headed, so certain. After leaving, my life would only get better. Ethan walked up to me, his face a mask of reluctance. "Sincere, I know you're angry with me, that you think I'm deliberately forcing you out. Why don't you hit me to vent your anger? I promise I won't fight back." As he spoke, he grabbed my arm and tried to make me hit him. Startled, I tried to yank my arm away. In the scuffle, Ethan suddenly stumbled sideways. His forehead hit the corner of a desk hard, and in the next second, blood appeared. Seeing this, Victoria shoved me away forcefully. "Sincere, are you insane? You actually dared to hit him?" She quickly knelt to help Ethan up, her eyes, now filled with disappointment, fixed on me. "Get out, a scumbag like you doesn't deserve to be in our company. Woo, call the police right now. Sincere Clark publicly assaulted someone, and I will press charges. Do you think you're so great just because you have a few resources and connections? You're nothing without this company. I'm going to blacklist you throughout the industry. You'll live to regret." This Victoria's face was flushed with anger as she glared at me, spitting out threats. The same colleagues who had been advising me moments ago were now pointing fingers, accusing me of being morally corrupt and resorting to violence. In an instant, I became the public enemy. But I didn't offer a single word of defense. On my way to the company earlier, I had already sent messages to all our investors, informing them of my impending departure. Victoria thought the company had bestowed those resources upon me, but she didn't know they had only chosen her small company because of my status as the son of the country's wealthiest man. Now that I was gone, those resource magnates wouldn't give her a second glance. Seeing me stop and turn back, Victoria let out a disdainful snort. "Regretting it already? If you get on your knees and apologize to Ethan right now, I might consider not pressing charges. But as for you threatening me with your resignation, that won't be settled so easily." Just as she finished speaking, her secretary rushed in, clutching her phone, looking frantic. Ignoring the chaos in the office, she shouted, "Miss Smith, Customs says our company's shipment is suspected of smuggling and has been entirely impounded. Also, all our investors just called to terminate their contracts. The company's capital chain has completely snapped." Her words silenced the entire office. Even Victoria froze on the spot. "What did you say?" The secretary, sweating profusely, repeated herself. She glanced nervously at Ethan. "Mr. Reed has been in charge of our shipments recently. Miss Smith, what should we do now?" As all eyes turned to him, Ethan's voice rose sharply. "What nonsense are you talking about? I followed all the regulations during the inspection. How could there be a problem? I think you're the one who made a mistake and are trying to shift the blame. Besides, if the investors were pulling out, why didn't anyone notify us? What kind of secretary are you?" Victoria also seemed skeptical, frowning at her teary-eyed secretary. "Are you sure you heard correctly? Our products have always had a great reputation. We've never had any issues before. How could they possibly be suspected of smuggling now?" Chastised by Victoria, the secretary didn't dare say more. The investors pulling out was within my expectations, but I knew nothing about a smuggling suspicion. Thinking this, my gaze slowly shifted to Ethan. Could he be involved? This was a serious matter. I stepped forward and asked, "Did Customs specify which batch of goods had the problem?" But before the secretary could answer, Ethan let out a dismissive sneer. "Sincere, haven't you already resigned? Why are you pretending to care about the company now? Or is it a guilty conscience?" Prompted by his words, Victoria shot me a suspicious look. Her voice was sharp. "Sincere, I can't believe you'd stoop to such dirty tricks. No wonder you were so eager to leave. You just can't stand to see our company succeed, can you?" Ethan fanned the flames, his words flowing naturally. "Vicky, don't be angry. Maybe Sincere just wanted to get your attention and made a mistake in a moment of confusion. Why don't we give him a chance to make amends?" Victoria snorted at the suggestion. "His pettiness has caused such a terrible impact on the company. He wants a chance to fix it now? Impossible. I will absolutely not tolerate someone like him in this company." Watching them play their good cop, bad cop routine, I found it utterly ridiculous. After all, I had watched this company grow step by step. I had only turned back to give Victoria a warning. Since that was the case, what did her survival have to do with me? Before their performance was over, two impeccably dressed men walked in from outside. I recognized them immediately. They were the top lawyers who had always been by my father's side. While I was still processing my confusion, Attorney Scott had already pulled a document from his briefcase. "Miss Smith, we've already spoken with your secretary, but due to the special circumstances, our Mr. Clark felt it would be best to speak with you in person, which is why he sent me.
This is the contract termination agreement.
Effective immediately, the Clark Corporation will be withdrawing its $80 million investment." Victoria's brow furrowed tightly. Why terminate the contract out of the blue? Didn't we already agree on everything? As for the reason, you should be well aware. The sole condition for our cooperation was that Mr. Sincere Clark would be in charge of the project. Now that Mr. Clark has resigned, our partnership is automatically void. A wave of shock rippled through the office. Jaws dropped. Even I hadn't expected this. My father had said he wouldn't interfere in my life anymore, yet he had been secretly helping us all along. The Clark Corporation held immense prestige in the industry. Whoever was in charge of this collaboration was destined for fame. Before this, Victoria had never mentioned it to me. She must have been planning to give this golden opportunity to Ethan. As the lawyer turned to leave, Victoria panicked. She grabbed my arm and pushed me forward. "Attorney Scott, Sincere hasn't resigned. I never approved his resignation. This is all a misunderstanding. Sincere, I was too impulsive earlier. I apologize. I'll have the shipment issue investigated thoroughly, and if it turns out you had nothing to do with it, I will clear your name. As for this project..." "No." I cut her off, shaking her hand away. "I have already decided to resign. The company's affairs have nothing to do with me anymore. And another thing, Victoria, let's get a divorce." I had originally planned to formally bring up the divorce after the papers were drafted, but now that I had decided to draw a clear line, there was no need to hesitate. As the words left my mouth, my colleague's eyes widened in astonishment. "What? Did I hear that right? Sincere and Victoria are married? I heard a rumor that Miss Smith was married, but I thought it was to Ethan. I can't believe they were secretly married for 5 years right under our noses." Listening to their chatter, a chill crept into my heart. This was probably the real reason Victoria had insisted on keeping our marriage a secret. Since she couldn't be with Ethan openly, she let everyone assume they were the couple. So what did my 5 years of devotion even count for? I turned and walked out of the office without a backward glance. Victoria, her voice frantic and angry, called after me. "Sincere Clark, you stop right there. Don't you forget, you were the one who begged me on your knees to marry you. What right do you have to ask for a divorce now?" In her haste, she stumbled in her high heels, and Ethan had to catch her. Victoria's eyes were red as she stared fiercely at my retreating back. Seeing my resolve, she yelled defiantly, "Fine, a divorce it is. Don't you regret it?" How could I possibly regret it? I was the one who should regret recklessly abandoning the life that was meant for me, all for Victoria. After leaving the company, I found Attorney Scott and his colleagues still waiting by the entrance. When he saw me, he proactively opened the car door for me, his tone respectful. "Young master, Mr. Clark is waiting for you at home." I had sent my father a message that morning, telling him I was going to the office to handle my resignation before coming home. He must have sent Attorney Scott to the company in the meantime. Once in the car, I turned to look out the window. The company entrance was bustling with people, but there wasn't a single familiar face. I coolly retracted my gaze and told the driver to go. On the way, I thought about a lot of things and found a sense of release. When I got home, my mother, Diana, had already prepared a huge feast. Seeing me walk in, she rushed over and hugged me excitedly, holding my hands and looking me over from head to toe. "You've gotten thinner. I almost didn't recognize you." Her words brought a lump to my throat. To be with Victoria, I had fought tooth and nail with my family, nearly severing all ties. Back then, I thought love was the most important thing in life, but in the process, I had unknowingly hurt the people who mattered most. I fought back tears, bent down to hug her, and patted her back comfortingly. "I was immature before. I made you worry." My father just snorted, his gaze shifting away from me. "What did I tell you? I told you I didn't approve of you being with that woman. Whether it was family background or anything else, you two wouldn't last. And what did you say back then?" I lowered my head. My father was right. I had been too arrogant, thinking Victoria and I could grow old together. Reality had slapped me hard in the face. My mother shot him a look, her tone disapproving. "You old man? Before Sincere got back, weren't you the one constantly calling to ask about him? Worried your son was struggling with his business, you even allocated an $80 million project to him. What are you pretending for now?" Exposed by my mother, my father glared at her before finally standing up. "Since you're back, let's not talk about the past. Come and eat." At the dinner table, my father asked about my future plans. I knew he wanted me to come back and take over the family business. He was nearing retirement age, and someone needed to inherit the family enterprise. I had been unwilling to accept the family's arrangements before, but things were different now. I put down my chopsticks and looked at my father with a serious expression. "I'm willing to work at the company." A smile finally appeared on my father's face, as if to say I had finally come to my senses. After dinner, I went back to my room alone. Just as I walked in, I got a call from Victoria. Her voice sounded choked with tears. "Sincere, why are all your things gone? Even if you're throwing a tantrum, there should be a limit." 7 confused, I pulled the phone away from my ear to check the caller ID, almost thinking she had dialed the wrong number. "I've already sent the divorce papers to your email. If you have any issues, you can contact my lawyer directly." My response was met with a long silence. Just when I thought she had hung up, her voice came through, faint and airy. "I'm pregnant." I was completely stunned. Perhaps afraid I wouldn't believe her, Victoria spoke quickly. "I've already been to the hospital for a checkup. I was originally planning to give you this as a surprise for our anniversary, but you know how things have been these past couple of days. I just didn't get a chance to tell you. The doctor said I'm 3 weeks pregnant." I clearly remembered that 3 weeks ago was right before I was due to leave for my overseas trip. Because I was expected to be gone for 2 months, I was reluctant to leave Victoria alone. We had a candlelit dinner that night and drank a lot of wine. That was the one time we didn't use any protection, but the specific details were a blur. Could the world really be that coincidental? Hearing my prolonged silence, Victoria asked softly, "Didn't you always want a child? Maybe this is fate telling us our story isn't over." "Sincere, can you really bear to disown your own child?" I took a deep breath and said, "Let's meet tomorrow and talk." After hanging up, I tossed my phone aside, my mind in a state of turmoil. I had never believed in fate, but now I felt like life was playing a cruel joke on me. Because of this, I didn't sleep well all night. The next day, I met Victoria with 2 large dark circles under my eyes. She looked to be in good spirits. As soon as she sat down, she handed me a neatly folded prenatal report. I clearly saw the date of the examination. It was indeed 2 days before our wedding anniversary. "I didn't expect you to come back yesterday, so I never got around to telling you." She then looked up, her gaze intense. After a night of wrestling with my thoughts, I had already made a decision. This child could not be kept. I didn't want this child to be born into a family with broken parental love, with an uncle like Ethan Reed whose relationship with his mother was so ambiguous. Rather than the 4 of us being tangled in an inextricable mess, it was better to cut it off from the start. But before I could speak, Victoria sat down next to me. She held my hand tightly, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Sincere, we've known each other for 7 years. I admit, since the company got on its feet, I've neglected you, but I was doing it so we could have a better life together. Now that the Clark Corporation has agreed to invest in us, are you really going to give up this golden opportunity and walk away from me and the company?" I snapped back to reality in an instant, coldly pulling my hand away and looking at her. "So, this child is just a bargaining chip for your career?" I stood up again, my gaze devoid of any emotion. "You should terminate the pregnancy. It's better for the child not to be born than to be born into a family destined for unhappiness. Sincere, how can you be so cold-blooded?" I looked away, unable to meet her gaze. As much as it pained me, I couldn't bear the thought of living under this shadow for the rest of my life. I paid for the coffee and left the cafe without another word to Victoria. When I got home, my mother was already bustling about, insisting I accompany her to a high society charity gala. It was just as well. I desperately needed something to distract me, but halfway there, our car broke down and stopped in the middle of the road. As the driver was about to get out and check, a black Bentley slammed into us from behind. The inertia threw me forward. I reacted quickly, steadying my mother. The window of the rear-ending car rolled down and a man yelled at us, "Do you know how to drive? Are you trying to get killed stopping in the middle of the road?" I turned my head and, squinting, recognized the license plate. It was Victoria's car. Our driver, had already gotten out to inspect the damaged rear bumper, and Ethan Reed got out of the other car and walked up to him. He didn't see me in the car and grabbed the driver by the collar. "Are you looking for trouble? Do you have any idea there's a pregnant woman in my car? If anything happens to her, can you take responsibility?" In fact, when our car had malfunctioned, the driver had immediately turned on the hazard lights and was trying to pull over to the emergency lane. The cars behind us had all managed to avoid us, all except Ethan. I had a clear view. He had driven straight into us, almost as if it were intentional. Because I had instructed him beforehand, our driver tried to avoid a conflict and actively negotiated with him. But no matter what the driver said, Ethan maintained a thuggish attitude of "I'm not listening unless you pay up." As they were at a standstill, Victoria got out of the car. The collar of her dress was slightly disheveled, one hand barely covering a red mark on the side of her neck. I understood instantly. No wonder every other driver could see the hazard lights and steer clear, while Ethan crashed straight into us. He wasn't watching the road at all. My gaze drifted to her flat stomach. For a moment, I even suspected that Victoria had forged a prenatal report just to secure the project. My mother also recognized Victoria. She seemed to sense I didn't want to get entangled, so she told the driver to resolve it quickly and get back in the car. But as fate would have it, our paths were destined to cross. Even after switching cars, we arrived at the charity gala one after the other, right behind Victoria. I frowned, wanting nothing more to do with them. I was about to head to the second floor when Ethan spotted me. He was dressed in a black tuxedo, revealing a green Rolex Submariner on his wrist. I recognized it as a custom piece. A month ago, I had seen that watch in a drawer in our bedroom. I had foolishly assumed it was for me. Ethan walked over with 2 glasses of champagne, a punchable smirk on his face. "Sincere, what are you doing here?" "As I recall, this charity gala is for high society business people. Don't tell me you snuck in?" He offered me the champagne in his right hand, but before I could take it, he abruptly pulled his hand back. "Oh, my apologies. I remember Vicky saying you're allergic to alcohol and can't drink, but I still have to toast you with this." With that, he raised his arm and poured the champagne onto the floor in front of me. Not until the glass was empty did he raise an eyebrow at me in challenge. Faced with his provocation, I just gave him a cool glance. The truth was, I could drink. But back when I used to take Victoria to business meetings, I always used tea instead of alcohol. And those bosses, intimidated by my status, never dared to pressure me to drink. Over time, Victoria came to believe I couldn't drink, and eventually she stopped wanting me to handle business negotiations at all. I was happy for the break. Who would have thought it would become fodder for Ethan's ridicule now? I didn't want to get mixed up with him and turned to leave, but Ethan grabbed my arm. He stepped on the puddle of champagne he had just poured, and then fell to the ground in a ridiculously clumsy manner. His theatrical cry of pain drew the curious gazes of the surrounding guests. Victoria, who had been in the middle of a conversation, rushed over. Seeing the scene, she immediately frowned. She helped Ethan up and, without hesitation, pointed an accusing finger at me. "Sincere, do you really have to follow us here to cause trouble? How dare you get violent in a public place like this? Do you want me to have security throw you out?" 9. Ethan leaned into her embrace, his voice meek and timid. "It's not Sincere's fault. I was the one who upset him. Besides, he's right. I don't deserve to be here. I say you have the right, and you do." Victoria pulled him behind her. "With me here, let's see who dares to gossip." Her words were clearly aimed at me. Meeting Victoria's eyes, I gave a slight smirk. Could you stop with the paranoid delusions for 1 second? Who started the provocation? Should we check the security footage and see? At that, Ethan fell silent, just lowering his head and standing behind Victoria. His obvious guilt was met with Victoria's soft, comforting words. "Ethan, I believe you." I shook my head and went to the ballroom's rooftop for some fresh air. The cool night wind on my face was instantly sobering. I watched the distant neon lights flicker, walking along the rooftop railing until I was behind the water tank. Just then, I heard the creak of the iron rooftop door being pushed open. I was about to peek out when I heard Victoria's voice. "Why did you go looking for him? Didn't I tell you? For the time being, even if you run into Sincere, you're supposed to pretend you don't see him and avoid him. Do you just ignore everything I say?" I frowned slightly. Why did Ethan have to avoid me? I was completely hidden in the shadow of the massive water tank, and on the quiet rooftop, I could hear their conversation clearly. Ethan stepped forward and hugged Victoria, rubbing his chin affectionately against her ear. I just couldn't help it. "You're carrying my child, but now you want to let Sincere play the father?" At that moment, something in my mind exploded. What did he say? The child in Victoria's womb was Ethan's? I felt unsteady on my feet as I replayed everything Victoria had said before. A cold sweat broke out on my back. Victoria pushed his hands away, her voice tinged with annoyance. "Keep your voice down. If it wasn't to salvage the project with the Clark Corporation, why would I go to all this trouble? The Clark project is only for 80 million, but if it goes smoothly, our company could become a leader in the industry. I have no idea what the executives at Clark Corporation see in Sincere, insisting that he has to be the point of contact. Otherwise, this would have been over long ago." I lowered my eyes, my fists clenched tightly. I think I understood now. From the very beginning, Victoria's apparent weakness was all for the Clark Corporation project. But she didn't know that the Clark Corporation wasn't interested in my abilities. They were interested in me. Their conversation stopped, followed by a series of sordid, soft sounds. After a long while, their footsteps faded away. I dragged my heavy feet out from behind the tank. Victoria's words echoed in my ears, striking my heart like a heavy hammer. I took a few deep breaths to calm myself before heading back downstairs. As I entered the ballroom, a guest waved me over to a seat. I looked around but didn't see my mother. She must have gotten caught up chatting with her friends. I took a nearby seat. I had barely settled in when the woman next to me waved at Victoria and Ethan, who were also just coming downstairs, motioning for them to join us. Victoria hesitated for only a second before walking over and sitting down next to me. She turned to me proactively. "Sincere, I'm sorry about what happened earlier. It was Ethan's first time at an event like this, and he was a bit ill-mannered. Please don't blame him. I've already given him a stern talking to." Her idea of a stern talking to was that sordid scene on the rooftop? I said nothing, my eyes glancing at the mark beneath her collar. Ignoring the surrounding guests, I spoke directly. "I think you're the one who's ill-mannered. Next time you come out, remember to cover yourself up properly. The makeup can barely hide it." Victoria froze, her face flushing a deep red. She subconsciously pulled her collar higher, her eyes darting around. She relaxed only when she saw that no one was paying attention to us. She then leaned closer to me. "Sincere, I can explain. It's not what you think. I'm a pregnant woman now. How could I possibly do something like that? I know you're angry, but the baby is innocent. Feel, this is your son." She took my hand and placed it on her stomach. My fingertips trembled slightly. I met her gaze. "In that case, let's have the baby." "Really? Oh, honey, I knew you were the best." Victoria's eyes lit up with joy. She was about to hug me, but I raised a hand to stop her. As she looked at me, confused, a small smile played on my lips. "Then you'd better sign the divorce papers quickly. Otherwise, this child really will become illegitimate." Victoria's face went deathly pale. Her thin lips trembled. What are you talking about? What illegitimate child?" I turned my head to look at Ethan, who was sitting on her other side. I had to admire his ability to stay quiet for so long. I took out my phone and played the recording I had just made. Do I need to be more explicit? The child in your belly isn't mine, so you can stop acting in front of me. I watched the myriad of expressions cross Victoria's face, and the person before me felt like a complete stranger. I remembered when we were first starting our business. We had been duped by a materials supplier, choosing a private channel over the market and getting scammed out of over $50,000. Although we cut our losses quickly for the two of us who were pinching every penny back then, it was a devastating start. The supplier had already vanished, so we had no one to vent our frustrations on. We just sat on the curb, watching the people hurry by. Victoria asked me a question then. She said, "Promise you'll never lie to me for the rest of your life. No matter what it is, don't lie to me for my own good." I held her hand tightly, feeling the warmth of her palm, and nodded firmly. "I will never lie to you, and you have to do the same." But she had long forgotten her own words. No wonder so many people throughout history have said that money is the most terrifying thing in the world. It can elevate a person to great heights, and it can also corrupt their soul. I also suddenly understood why my father's bet with me had used the success of the business as the dividing line. If my relationship with Victoria remained strong, the $80 million would have been my father's blessing. But if we were destined to part, that money would be the mirror that showed me her true colors. At this point, Ethan dropped his act. He nodded curtly. "You're right. Vicky is pregnant with my child. So what? Her begging you to stay is a compliment. Come back, seal the deal with the Clark Corporation, and it's a win-win for us. Don't be ungrateful." Now that the truth was out, Victoria stopped using the baby to gain sympathy. She pursed her lips, her eyes dark as she looked at me. "Sincere, I know what you want. It's company shares, isn't it? I'll agree. As long as you come back and finalize the Clark Corporation project, I can give you 2% from my holdings. After that, whether you stay or go, I won't interfere. Those 2 points will be enough to keep you comfortable for the rest of your life." I looked at her and laughed coldly. Her company was on the brink of collapse. What good would 2% of its shares be to me? As if reading my mind, the smile on Victoria's lips deepened. She wrapped her arm around Ethan's. "Don't worry. The company has no external disputes right now. Customs has already cleared everything. Our goods have no issues. As for the investors, Ethan introduced me to a major overseas corporation. All those previous small-time investors combined can't compare to this one." I heard the boast in her words and looked at Ethan with renewed suspicion. Sensing my disbelief, Victoria continued, "I was just giving you a way out by letting you handle the Clark Corporation project. Otherwise, Ethan knows the heir to the Clark Corporation. With just one word from him, they would choose to work with us anyway." 11 hearing this, I burst out laughing. I nodded nonchalantly. "Well then, I wish you the best." Seeing that I wouldn't budge for either threats or incentives, Victoria's face turned ugly, and she was at a loss for words. That is, until my mother appeared. She seemed to have had a fair bit to drink, her steps a little unsteady. Worried she might fall, I quickly reached out to steady her, helping to readjust the shawl that had slipped from her shoulders. "Why did you drink so much?" Her breath carried the faint scent of alcohol. She leaned against my arm for support. "I ran into a few old friends I haven't seen in a while. It's about wrapping up here anyway. You can take me home now." But we had only taken 2 steps when Victoria shouted, rushing to block our path. "Sincere, so that's how you got into this exclusive charity gala. I can't believe you'd stoop so low. No wonder you looked so disdainful when I offered you shares. After all, once you've cozied up to a sugar mama, you don't need to work hard for a living anymore." A torrent of vile insults filled the air, drawing the attention of the other guests. The gala was winding down, and many people were heading for the exit. As the crowd of onlookers grew, I frowned in annoyance. Just as I was about to speak, my mother looked at her. "You are Victoria Smith?" Suddenly being called by her name, Victoria looked momentarily stunned. She looked the woman before her up and down. The two had never formally met. Back then, I was angry with my parents and only told them about my marriage to Victoria after the fact. My mother had only seen her in pictures, but she recognized her instantly. A mocking smile played on Victoria's lips. "So you know you're the old woman breaking up a marriage? Think you're so great just because you have a little dirty money? Let me tell you, I am Sincere's real wife. We are not divorced yet," she spoke loudly, with the brazenness of someone catching a cheater in the act. It was obvious. Since I had refused to help her, she was now trying to ruin my reputation. But she was doomed to fail. My mother looked up at me, bewildered. She clearly hadn't expected Victoria, who looked so innocent on the outside, to be so shrewish. Before she could explain, Victoria lunged forward. She grabbed my mother's wrist and yanked her out of my arms. "Everyone, look, this old hag is shamelessly seducing my husband. Is there no decency left in the world?" My mother was wearing an elegant evening gown and high heels tonight. Already unsteady from the alcohol, she was thrown to the ground by Victoria's forceful pull. My heart sank, and I rushed to help her up. Seeing Victoria still loudly misleading the crowd, my anger flared. "Have you said enough? Stop spouting baseless accusations here, or I will make you pay the price." But in the next second, she slapped me hard across the face. Victoria placed a hand on her stomach and began to wail. "You all heard him. I'm carrying this man's child, and he's cheating on me with an old woman behind my back. Now he's even threatening me to shut up." Ethan also raised his phone and started a live stream. The stream, titled "Man Cheats with Sugar Mama, Abandons Wife," instantly shot to the top of the local trending topics. The scene exploded into chaos. Everyone sided with Victoria, condemning me. Whatever I said was dismissed as a weak excuse. The commotion continued until two of my mother's friends pushed through the crowd. "All of you, shut up. This is the wife of the chairman of the Clark Corporation 12. The scene fell silent for a moment, then Ethan burst out laughing. "Are you two in on it with them? Chairman's wife?" The news clearly stated that the chairman of the Clark Corporation and his wife are vacationing abroad. How could she possibly be here? He wasn't wrong. My parents had indeed been vacationing overseas. They had only rushed back because I admitted I had lost the bet. Following his lead, Victoria quickly recovered. "I can't believe you people are so audacious you'd even dare to impersonate someone from the Clark Corporation." I frowned, knowing that no matter what I said now, they wouldn't believe me. I let Ethan continue his live stream, helped my mother up, and started walking towards the exit, pulling out my phone to call my lawyer. The company's PR team was going to have a long night. But before we could take more than a few steps, Victoria snatched my phone and smashed it on the ground. "You're not leaving until you give me an explanation today." The scene descended into a chaotic mess until a steady male voice came from the second floor. "What is all this commotion about?" Instantly, the area fell quiet. The crowd that had been eagerly watching the drama quickly dispersed, as if afraid of getting caught in the crossfire. Ethan, holding his phone, rushed forward to be the first to complain.
"There's a pretty boy who snuck in here."
We were just helping the host deal with him. Otherwise, it would lower the standards of this entire high-end event, wouldn't it? As soon as he finished speaking, two security guards flanked him, grabbing his arms and restraining him. Ethan struggled frantically, but the moment he moved, he was forced to his knees. "Why are you grabbing me?" "The person you should be grabbing is Sincere Clark." A guard walked over and stomped on his phone. With a sharp crack, the phone that had been live streaming went silent, its screen shattering into a spider web of cracks. "Since you know this is an exclusive event, how dare you live stream here and cause a scene? I think you're the one who doesn't know his place." The man who spoke carried an air of authority. He was clearly the host of tonight's charity gala. On the way here, my mother had mentioned him briefly. The host, Mr. Stevens, had some history with our family years ago, but contact had dwindled after he emigrated. Before today, they hadn't seen each other in 7 or 8 years. It was a shame that what should have been a joyous reunion was trampled by Ethan. The butler searched Ethan but found no invitation, loudly demanding to know how he had gotten in. I glanced over at Victoria. She stood on the edge of the crowd, her eyes full of fear, not daring to step forward. So this was her so-called love. It wasn't until the butler said he was handing Ethan over to the police that Victoria finally emerged, her face ashen. He came with me. I'm so sorry, Mr. Stevens. He's young and foolish and broke the rules. I hope you can be magnanimous and not hold it against him. Mr. Stevens just snorted and then walked over to my mother, his face filled with concern. Mrs. Clark, are you all right? My mother hadn't been that drunk to begin with, and the commotion had completely sobered her up. She waved her hand, giving a meaningful look at the stunned Victoria in the distance, and sighed lightly. It's nothing serious. It must have been a misunderstanding. Since it's all cleared up now, let's just let it go. I knew she was saying this for my sake, not wanting to pursue the matter further. But Ethan, still struggling, was shouting obscenities. So what if she's the Clark Corporation chairman's wife? It just means this kid got lucky, hooking up with the chairman's wife herself. No wonder the Clark Corporation specifically requested you for the project, so you slept your way to the top. Disgusting. I couldn't take it anymore. I walked over and kicked Ethan hard. If you dare to spread another rumor, I won't let you off. My mother beckoned to me from behind. Don't waste your energy on trash like him. Son, let's go home. 13. Upon hearing her call me son, Victoria's eyes widened in shock. What? You're the Clark Corporation's. I hadn't planned on revealing my identity to her, but if I didn't, I feared even more vicious rumors would spread. I didn't look at Victoria, instead leading my mother straight out of the venue. Once we were in the car, she sighed. And to think I always believed Victoria Smith was a kind and understanding girl. After all, building a company that large on her own couldn't have been easy. But after seeing her today, I'm just glad your father wasn't there. Otherwise, things wouldn't have ended so simply. I remained silent, but the matter didn't truly end there. Because Ethan's live stream had been cut off, netizens became even more curious about the charity gala. By the time I got home, my father already knew what had happened. He was furiously on the phone with his assistant, demanding that the PR team take down the trending topic. Hearing the sound at the door, he turned, saw us, and hung up with an annoyed grunt. Look at the mess you've made. I hung my head, feeling a sense of injustice. It was clearly Victoria and Ethan who had started the trouble, yet I was the one who had to bear the consequences. I sighed. Just then, the phone in my pocket vibrated. Seeing the vaguely familiar number, my heart skipped a beat. It was from the client whose deal I had secured on my business trip. At the time, I had worked day and night overseas to close that deal just to get back in time for our anniversary. But Victoria hadn't believed I could close it so quickly and had torn up the contract. And now, why should I bother thinking about the company's interests? With that thought, I answered the call. Hello. Let's cancel the deal we discussed. The person on the other end was surprised and asked repeatedly if I was sure, but I nodded without hesitation. The contract was torn up, and I've already resigned. If you're still interested in a partnership, you can contact Ms. Victoria Smith. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then a woman's cool voice replied, I understand. I will relay this to our chairman. After hanging up, I looked out at the dark night. All ties between Victoria and me were now severed. My lawyer informed me that the legal divorce process included a mandatory 1-month cooling-off period. This meant that no matter what, the divorce wouldn't be final for at least another month. I nodded, accepting the outcome. Thanks to the Clark Corporation's intervention, the online gossip was quickly suppressed. The next day, when I searched again, I couldn't find any related trending topics. Instead, the #1 trending story was the news that Victoria's company was on the verge of bankruptcy. I almost thought I had misread it. Logically, a company of Victoria's size going bankrupt shouldn't have been big enough news to trend. I clicked on the post and saw that the real story wasn't the bankruptcy itself, but a video that someone had leaked from that day. It showed Victoria, for the sake of a newcomer, trying to fire me, a loyal employee of 5 years. The comments section was filled with so-called insiders. They claimed Victoria had found a new lover and was casting aside her husband of many years. Someone else revealed that Victoria's company's goods had quality issues, and had even been detained by customs before. Although it was later clarified as a misunderstanding, the truth was that they had pulled some strings to swap out the shipment at the last minute. The truly problematic goods had not yet been destroyed and were currently sitting in the warehouse behind the company. Opinions on this insider's revelation were mixed. After all, a secret that could be so easily exposed was hardly a secret at all. But as I scrolled, something occurred to me. I immediately contacted my lawyer to amend the divorce agreement. 14. Previously, wanting to avoid a fight and just sever ties with Victoria quickly, I had agreed to a 50-50 split of our marital assets in the divorce agreement. But now, Victoria had blatantly gotten pregnant with Ethan's child during our marriage and still expected me to be the fall guy. I had more than enough reason to make her leave with nothing. After settling that, I leaned back on the sofa and closed my eyes to rest. The past trickled through my mind like a movie. I knew Victoria's finances were already a complete mess, but I didn't care. What I wanted was for her to face public disgrace. The next morning, I went to the Clark Corporation to start my new job as planned, but I ran into Victoria right at the company entrance. She seemed just as surprised to see me, walking towards me with her bag, a look of astonishment on her face. "Sincere, what are you doing here?" Her eyes scanned me up and down, her tone demanding. "I was calling you all last night. Why didn't you answer?" I held up my phone and said flatly, "Sorry, you're blocked." If we were going to make a clean break, it had to be complete. I turned to walk into the building, but Victoria chased after me and blocked my path. "Are you here for an interview?" When I didn't answer, she seemed to take it as a yes. Her expression instantly turned disdainful. "Sincere, I don't even know what to say to you. You had such a golden opportunity right in front of you, a chance to be on the client side with the Clark Corporation, and now you'd rather come here to apply for some insignificant job? I've been in contact with the Clark Corporation for a while now. I have some connections here. What do you think would happen if I went in right now and put in a good word for you?" I stared at her arrogant face, almost hoping she would do it. "Looks like you didn't learn your lesson at the charity gala. If you want to go, be my guest. If there's nothing else, please get out of my way." She noticed the impatience on my face and paused for a moment. In the past, I had been completely obedient to her. The slightest frown from her would have me anxiously trying to soothe her. She was clearly not used to this sudden assertiveness. But after being a doormat for so long, anyone would get tired. She shouted at my back, her voice laced with frustration. "Don't think I don't know who you really are. You're just the young master of the Clark Corporation, right? What's so great about that?" My steps faltered. She clearly knew my identity, yet she had just asked if I was here for an interview. But before I could speak, she let out a small laugh. "Just some illegitimate son who can't be seen in public. I really don't know what you're so proud of." 15. It was the morning rush hour. Victoria's words caused many passing employees to slow down, casting curious glances our way. "Did you hear that? That guy is supposedly the Clark Corporation's illegitimate son? I always thought the chairman and his wife had such a great relationship. I was envious for so long. See, trusting men is the biggest mistake. You know, he does look a bit like the chairman. An illegitimate son can now just walk into the company openly? Looks like things are about to change around here. But haven't you heard? The chairman is retiring next month. The eldest son is still abroad, so someone has to take over the domestic operations. It might just be him." I frowned. No one would be happy being slandered like that. "What did you say? Illegitimate son?" Victoria crossed her arms, looking at me with amusement. What else could it be? After I went home that night, I thought about it, and it just didn't add up. That woman's identity couldn't be fake, and you two are mother and son. But the Clark Corporation only has one young master, and I've seen him on TV. It's definitely not you, so if you're not an illegitimate son, what are you? Seeing her look of smug self-discovery, I could only find it laughable. Perhaps this was what my father meant by the insurmountable distance between me and Victoria. She walked slowly towards me. "I received the revised divorce papers your lawyer sent. You want to take all my assets to secure your own position, right? But you don't have to go through all this trouble. Your identity is already something that can't see the light of day. If you add divorce to that, it will be even harder for you to enter the Clark family's doors. Why don't we make a deal?" At the mention of a deal, I raised an eyebrow, waiting for her to continue. She stepped closer, a hint of a smile in her eyes. "The terms are simple. We don't get divorced. You help me secure the Clark Corporation project, and in return, I'll give you full authority over the project. Once you've achieved something, you'll have a legitimate reason to go back home." Her proposal was for me to feed her top-tier resources, allowing her to use her company as a springboard for me to build a track record and then return to the Clark Corporation. It seemed like a win-win situation. Unfortunately for her, her calculations were wrong from the very beginning. "Sorry," I said, taking 2 steps back. "This divorce is happening." "Aren't you afraid that before she could finish her threat, the sound of a car screeching to a halt came from nearby? A white-gloved driver quickly got out and opened the car door, revealing a young man in a sharp suit. A smile immediately appeared on Victoria's face. "I bet the eldest Mr. Clark doesn't know he has a little brother, does he? What do you think would happen if I went over and told him right now?" Victoria whispered in my ear, pressuring me to make a quick decision. But she had chosen the wrong path. Under the watchful eyes of the gossiping crowd, I walked towards Stephen Clark. "Bro." He finally noticed me and casually slung an arm over my shoulder, his tone normal. "When did you get here? Why are you just standing at the entrance?" I glanced back at the stunned Victoria and gave a brief introduction. "I just ran into an old friend. We were just catching up. I'll be up in a minute." Only then did Stephen's gaze fall on Victoria. "When did you two meet?" Victoria blurted out, but then seemed to realize her mistake. She bit her lip, looking between the two of us with a very strange expression. This was the first time my brother had met Victoria, and he was completely unaware of our relationship. "Aren't you going to introduce us?" This is perhaps sensing that my brother and I were on good terms. Victoria decided to take the initiative. "Hello, Mr. Clark. I'm Sincere's wife. My name is Victoria Smith." 16. At that moment, the expression on my face was even more priceless than my brother's. Stephen stared at her thoughtfully for a long moment before extending his hand to shake hers. Before he could say anything, Victoria launched into a pitch for her company, hoping to secure a partnership. You had to hand it to her, she had certainly learned how to navigate the business world over the years. When it came to networking and schmoozing, she was undeniably sharp. "Actually, I came here today hoping to meet you. If possible, perhaps we could schedule a meeting to discuss this further. I have great confidence in my company, which Sincere and I founded together. If you're so confident, then follow the standard procedure and contact our project manager. If you manage to work something out, then you can come to me," Stephen said, all business, making it clear he wouldn't be giving her any special treatment. Victoria's face stiffened for a second. She wanted to say more, but her phone buzzed incessantly in her pocket. "Excuse me, I need to take this." I happened to glimpse the caller ID on her screen. It was Star Innovations Inc., the overseas company from the deal. As expected, whatever the person on the other end said made Victoria's expression turn grim. "What do you mean? We have to pay a penalty for breach of contract? But the deal never went through, did it? Hello?" The call was disconnected. She stood frozen for a couple of seconds, then whipped her head around to look at me. "Sincere, was this your doing? When was the deal with Star Innovations finalized? And why are they now saying we breached the contract and have to pay a penalty?" I just spread my hands. "That contract was torn up right in front of you. Have you forgotten? When I was about to quit, I had kindly handed that $600 million contract to Ethan. But they refused to believe it was real, mocking me for forging it. Victoria's inaction at the time had now come back to her as a boomerang, 3 times the price in penalties. Her face turned deathly pale. Impossible. "How could you have possibly closed that deal in such a short amount of time?" she muttered to herself in a panic, seemingly trying to convince herself that she wasn't at fault. I ignored her and walked into the building with my brother. Once we were upstairs, he asked me what was going on. My brother had been busy managing the overseas branch for years and knew very little about my marriage to Victoria.
I ran a hand through my hair, not knowing where to begin, and finally just sighed.
It's all in the past. I just filed for divorce. Mom and Dad know about it. Stephen nodded and handed me a file. You're new to the company, so you're not familiar with the projects here. I've compiled some materials for you to look over. For now, just get familiar with the environment and then we'll figure out where to place you. I nodded, having no objections. Not long after I officially started at the Clark Corporation, I received a call from a former colleague. I was worried it was about some work handover issue, but they beat around the bush, just sighing and complaining. You have no idea. Ethan must have crossed someone powerful. He got beaten up badly and is still in the hospital. With that trending topic online, he probably won't be coming back to the company. But Victoria has lost her mind. She's constantly losing her temper at the office for no reason. Everyone is miserable. After listening for a while, I realized they had an ulterior motive and cut to the chase. The colleague on the other end chuckled and then asked in a fawning tone, I heard the Clark Corporation is your family's company? You were so low-key before having such a huge enterprise at home and still choosing to start from scratch. I was wondering, is the Clark Corporation hiring? For old time's sake, we all miss you. Do you think we could have a chance to be colleagues again? When Ethan had just been promoted and made an example of me, none of these colleagues had stood up for me. Now that they knew my identity, they couldn't wait to suck up. But I had no interest in their flattery. When my position is high enough, there is no shortage of sycophants. I don't have a say in the group's internal hiring decisions. If you've decided to switch jobs, you can submit your resume on the Clark Corporation's official website. Hearing my lack of interest in helping, the colleague's tone shifted instantly. Sincere, how can you be so cold-blooded? We're not asking you to arrange some high-level position just for a chance. You can't even do that? Yes, it's my family's company, my rules. And I'm not willing. I was about to hang up, but the colleague on the other end suddenly shouted. Wait, what if I have some dirt on Victoria? Is that enough for an internal referral to the Clark Corporation? 17 hearing this, my hand paused over the end call button. Dirt on Victoria? As I hesitated, the colleague, perhaps fearing I'd lose interest, laid all their cards on the table. Victoria's problematic shipment contained drugs. It was originally Ethan's plan to smuggle them out with the shipment, but because it was flagged by customs, the goods couldn't be destroyed. They're a ticking time bomb. I know you're in the middle of a divorce with her. After the way she treated you, you must hate her guts. If you want to see her utterly ruined, I can give you all the evidence, including the location where the goods are hidden. You can take a couple of days to think about it, but don't take too long. She knows that stuff could destroy her at any moment, and is probably trying to move it as we speak. I was too stunned to speak. Before this, I had assumed the shipment was just a case of mixing in some substandard or counterfeit products. I had no idea their audacity ran this deep. After thinking for less than half a minute, I said, This isn't something to discuss over the phone. Meet me at the coffee shop downstairs from the Clark Corporation after work. We'll talk in detail. Whether the evidence he had was real or fake, I would find out soon enough. After hanging up, I thought for a moment and then called a private investigator. I needed them to monitor Ethan's movements. If this information was correct, Ethan couldn't possibly remain idle after losing such a valuable shipment. Since Victoria was aware of the situation and hadn't destroyed the goods, it probably meant they were waiting for a more opportune moment to act. Stephen had already gone to a meeting. I had just put my files away and was about to leave my office when my assistant rushed in, looking panicked. What is it? A lot of police officers just arrived. They say they're here to see you. My heart dropped. I had no idea what was happening. Just a moment ago on the phone, the ones in trouble were supposed to be Ethan and Victoria. Before I could figure it out, several uniformed police officers walked in. They showed me their badges and said with grave seriousness, Mr. Clark, we've received a report that you are involved in illegal smuggling. As per regulations, we need you to come with us to the station for questioning." On the way to the police station, I kept wondering if this was all an elaborate setup. Victoria offers me a deal in the form of a sham marriage. I refuse. She has an employee call me with a tip about the problematic goods to lure me in, and now I'm the one being investigated by the police. But what could she possibly gain from all this? At the station, the officer began the interrogation quickly. Based on a public tip, we found a shipment of goods intended for overseas transport in your former company's warehouse. In a hidden compartment within the container, we discovered a large quantity of narcotics. Our initial investigation shows that you were responsible for inspecting these shipments, and the documents are signed with your name. I stared at the documents pushed in front of me for a long time. It was indeed my handwriting, but I had never seen this document before. Moreover, I had been out of the country for the entire last month, yet the signature date was from the end of last month. Someone had framed me. The moment that thought entered my mind, I immediately thought of Ethan. 18 from the very beginning, he had a backup plan for everything. He used my identity to carry out these illicit activities so that if things went south, I would be the scapegoat. This would clear the way for him to step on me and rise to the top. The only thing he hadn't anticipated was my true identity. I wasn't even in the country last month, so the date on this document is forged. According to procedure, any goods leaving the warehouse must be inspected and signed for on the same day. You can check the warehouse's security footage. Additionally, before I went abroad, my wife gave me 2 documents to sign. If I recall correctly, that's when she obtained my signature. You can also check the company's printer history to see when these documents were actually printed. Although I had already hired an investigator to look into Ethan's suspicious activities, I didn't mention him until I had concrete proof. At the same time, I presented the recording of the call I had received from my former colleague. All of this was enough to show that there were suspicious elements to the case. Soon my brother arrived at the police station. He was faster than I was. He had already gathered all the necessary evidence on his way over. The person who had reported me was Victoria, and she was currently at the hospital with Ethan. My brother nodded at his lawyer, who immediately laid out all the evidence on the table. Ethan had accumulated massive debts over the years. He had even been expelled from his university abroad for getting involved with criminal elements. He had no choice but to return home. As for his supposed overseas education and related certificates, they were all fakes bought on the black market. This alone was enough to show how thoroughly he had deceived Victoria. With all the evidence presented, the truth was clear without much further investigation. Soon the police brought Victoria and Ethan to the station for a confrontation. Victoria couldn't meet my gaze, while Ethan squirmed impatiently, trying to break free from the 2 officers restraining him. "Why did you arrest me? Isn't Sincere's name signed on the documents?" This was all his doing. What does it have to do with me? My brother grabbed the file from the table and threw it in his face. "You still have the nerve to say it has nothing to do with you? Do you need me to read all this evidence out loud? This is just a fraction of it, but it's enough to convict you. As for how you and Victoria conspired to use the company's shipping channels to smuggle drugs abroad and then pin it on Sincere, the police are investigating. It won't be long before the full truth comes out." Hearing this, Victoria's eyes widened. "What are you talking about? What drug smuggling? I don't know anything about this." She turned to Ethan, stunned. Seeing him remain silent, she grabbed his shirt. "What are they talking about? Answer me. You told me you just wanted to cut some costs by mixing in some defective products. You said no one would notice, that's why I helped you. Why are we at the police station now?" Ethan, seemingly fed up with her questions, shoved her away. "That's right. I used you and stopped playing the innocent victim here. Are you telling me you really had no idea? Weren't you the one who just called the police on Sincere? And before that, if you thought they were just defective products that no one would notice, why did you go to the trouble of forging Sincere's signature to be extra safe? You did that. You knew what I was planning all along. You're my accomplice. So don't even think about getting out of this. 19, the 2 of them. forgetting they were in a police station, looked like they were about to come to blows. The police had to intervene to stop the brawl. The officer who had interrogated me earlier walked over and handed me a report. "We have a basic understanding of the situation now. You can leave with your family for the time being. However, due to the severity of the case, we may need your cooperation for further investigation later." "No problem," I nodded. Less than 2 days later, the police contacted me to say the investigation was complete. It was now confirmed that Ethan's academic credentials were fake, and even the factory's surveillance footage had been doctored. During these 2 days, the partners from the breached contracts also came knocking, demanding compensation from Victoria. Hounded from all sides, Victoria was on the verge of a breakdown. Her last resort was to come to the Clark Corporation to block my path. Her face, once radiant, was now pale, her eyes red as she clutched the hem of my shirt. "Sincere, I'm begging you, please help me, otherwise I'm really going to die." I coldly shook her hand off. "There's nothing between us anymore. I'm not an employee of your company. What do you want me to help you with?" She looked devastated, her voice hoarse. "We're still husband and wife, we're not divorced yet. If I go bankrupt because of this, you won't get any of my assets either. But from the very beginning, I never cared about her so-called assets. The wealth Victoria held so dear was merely my monthly allowance. The only reason I insisted on her leaving with nothing was because I wanted her to be punished. I had already planned to donate all that money anyway, so what was there to feel sorry about? All the partners are after me now. They're even causing trouble at the office. I'm just a woman, I can't fight them off. And all those employees who swore to stick with the company through thick and thin have all disappeared. I was deceived by Ethan's silver tongue. I know I was wrong now, I'm truly sorry. Please, will you help me?" Victoria seemed to think this was a small matter for me, that with just one word from me, her company could be revived and all her problems would be solved. She forgot that I was no longer under any obligation to help her. With the 1-month cooling-off period almost over, I gave her a cool glance. "Don't forget to be at the Civil Affairs Bureau the day after tomorrow for the divorce." With that, I walked into the company without looking back. Later, I heard from the front desk staff that Victoria had waited outside for 5 or 6 hours, but without an appointment, and knowing our relationship, the receptionist didn't dare let her in. That night, at midnight, I was woken up by a phone call. Seeing the unfamiliar number, I had a bad feeling. When I answered, a young woman's voice came through. "Is this Mr. Sincere Clark? We found your number in Victoria Smith's emergency contacts. Is it convenient for you to come to the hospital?" Victoria had attempted suicide. The news jolted me awake. I grabbed a jacket and rushed out the door. When I arrived at the hospital, the doctor had just finished bandaging the wounds on her wrist. A pipe had burst in her apartment, and a neighbor had come over to ask about the leak, inadvertently saving Victoria, who had slit her wrists. Fortunately, she was brought to the hospital in time, so there were no serious consequences. But a nurse told me that no matter what they asked Victoria, she remained silent, like a mute. They had no other choice but to call me. "You're her husband, right? Men shouldn't be so career-focused. You need to spend more time with your family if there's a next time she might not be so lucky." The nurse patted my arm, sighed, and left with a medical tray. Now it was just me and Victoria in the room. She lay on the hospital bed, her face pale, her eyes fixed on me. "I'm so happy you came." I sat by her bedside, silent for a long time before asking, what was the point of all this? She managed a weak smile, her large, clear eyes holding an emotion I couldn't decipher. "You still have feelings for me, don't you? Otherwise, why would you have rushed to the hospital to see me? Sincere, let's not get a divorce, okay? You promised you would always be with me." She reached out and tugged at my sleeve, her eyes welling up with tears. We had made many promises to each other, but ever since I saw her true devotion to Ethan, I had stopped hoping for anything. She was the one who first broke our sacred vows. I stood up and straightened my clothes. "Tomorrow morning at 10, I'll be waiting for you at the Civil Affairs Bureau. If it's inconvenient for you to be there, you can have your lawyer go on your behalf. Also, you should change your emergency contact. I hope you won't disturb my life again." With that, I left the room. Behind me, I could hear Victoria's muffled sobs, but I was deaf to them. My heart no longer felt a single ripple of emotion. The next morning, I arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau on time. I wasn't worried about Victoria standing me up. Even if she didn't come, I would proceed with a contested divorce through the courts. If things escalated, it would only have a greater negative impact on her. I even wondered if Victoria's desperate attempts to hold on to me were because she genuinely couldn't let go of the marriage, or because after weighing the pros and cons, she realized that without me, her future was bleak. I couldn't find an answer, so I pushed the question out of my mind. I waited until 9:30 before Victoria finally arrived. She was wearing a high-collared, form-fitting sweater that made her look thin and frail, especially with the white bandage on her wrist that drew unwanted attention. She wore no makeup, and even a mask couldn't hide her weary, haggard expression. "Sorry, there was traffic. Let's go in." I didn't say much, just pushed the door open and walked into the bureau. Victoria followed slowly behind. I could see she was dragging her feet, deliberately stalling. I didn't rush her. I had already taken the day off from work and had all the time in the world to wait. It wasn't until we were stamping the documents that the staff member looked at us strangely and asked tentatively, "Ma'am, are you getting this divorce voluntarily? If you need any legal assistance, you can let me know at any time." Victoria just silently shook her head. By the time all the procedures were completed and the divorce certificates were in hand, it was already 10:30. I glanced at the time, then turned to her and gave a small wave. Silently in my heart, I said, "I hope we never see each other again." 21 When I got home, my mother shoved a stack of photos into my arms. I flipped through them, confused, as she excitedly chattered in my ear. "Look at these girls. See anyone you like? I can introduce you." I closed my eyes, feeling a headache coming on. "Mom, I just got divorced. Can you please give it a rest for a while?" This marriage had drained all my energy. I was even prepared to be alone for the rest of my life. But my mother gripped my arm tightly, pouting with dissatisfaction. "No way. Your brother being a committed bachelor is one thing, but your father and I are waiting for grandchildren. Aren't you supposed to be starting a new life? You can't just focus on your career. You have to balance work and love. If you don't pick one, I'll just pick one for you based on my preferences." Worn down by her persistence, I randomly pointed at a girl in one of the photos. "What's the point of me choosing? The girl has to like me back, right? I'm already divorced. Let's not ruin a nice girl's future." My mother just patted my shoulder with a, "Don't worry, I've got it all handled" expression. Before I could say anything else, she happily took the photo and went upstairs. I assumed a wealthy young lady would have no interest in a divorced man like me, but a couple of days later, while I was working overtime at the office, my mother sent me a restaurant address. "I've arranged for you to meet that girl tomorrow at 3 p.m. Remember to dress nicely and make a good impression." I replied with a perfunctory okay. The next afternoon, I deliberately went to the restaurant in old clothes, hoping to scare her off. To my surprise, I saw a familiar face. It was my high school classmate, Claire Taylor. She seemed to have recognized me right away, smiling as she stood up to greet me. Seeing my stunned expression, she tilted her head, her smile widening. "You don't remember me, do you? I thought you contacted me because you recognized my photo." I gave an embarrassed laugh. I had only glanced at the photos, and Claire's happened to be the first one, so I had pointed to it without a second thought. I hadn't really looked at it carefully. After we sat down, she spoke candidly. "I remember you had a girlfriend in college. Didn't you get married right after graduation?" I didn't know how to respond, so I just remained silent. Claire didn't seem to find it awkward at all. She stirred her coffee with one hand, her eyes lifting to glance at me. "See, true love really doesn't exist in this world." Her words sounded strange. I looked at her with amusement. "Then why did you come on this blind date?" The knot of anxiety in my stomach finally loosened. It seemed Claire wasn't really looking for a partner either. In that case, we could both report back to our families without any issue. But this time, she didn't answer right away. Instead, she propped her chin on her hand and looked at me directly. Because it was you. That's why I came. 22. The day we graduated from high school, Claire confessed her feelings to me. But at the time, all I could think about was going home to play video games. Besides, in 3 years of high school, I barely remembered any of the girls in my class. I was pretty sure we had exchanged fewer than 10 sentences in all that time. Not wanting to lead a girl on, I had rejected her decisively. Later, in college, we had some contact through the class group chat, but not much. We saw each other a few times at class reunions, where she was usually the one to initiate conversation. Now, I stared at her in shock. What did you say? Claire sat up straight, her expression turning serious. Actually, I've been following you for the past few years. I never forgot about you. But because you were married, I knew I shouldn't be in your life. So, as soon as I heard you were divorced, I came back. I'm not trying to pressure you into giving me an answer right now. I just wanted to tell you how I feel. Whatever you choose, I'll support you. I was too stunned to speak. Claire had come back specifically for me? Perhaps because I had grown so used to silently supporting Victoria without expecting anything in return, having someone suddenly and bravely step forward and say she was here for me, asking for nothing, left me utterly shaken. An indescribable feeling washed over me. After she finished speaking, she let out a sigh of relief. But don't feel any pressure. I'm not trying to force you into anything. I just hope that, if possible, you might consider me. I pursed my lips, about to speak, when a noise from nearby caught my attention. Along with the sharp crash of a bottle hitting the floor, a bald, middle-aged man was shouting rudely. I think you're looking for trouble. Take a look at yourself. Do you still think you're some big shot CEO? When you're begging for a favor, you need to act like it, understand? As he spoke, the man raised a glass, about to smash it in a woman's face. I frowned. I couldn't believe someone would be so brazen in a public place. Their table was close to mine, and shards of the broken bottle had scattered near my feet. I walked over and grabbed the man's arm, stopping him. Sir, this is a public place. I think you're the one who needs to watch your behavior. Sincere? A familiar voice called my name. I looked down and saw the woman kneeling on the floor, a complete mess. It was Victoria. I had only stepped in because I couldn't stand to see someone being humiliated, especially someone who seemed to have some status. I never expected the person being humiliated to be Victoria. I quickly pieced together the situation. Victoria was now drowning in debt. After leaving our marriage with nothing, she had no savings left. The only assets she could control were the few remaining finished goods in her company's warehouse. So, she was trying to use these products to secure a future for herself. But now she was like an ant. No one would respectfully call her Miss Smith anymore. If she wanted to make a deal, she had to endure humiliation. Thinking I had come specifically to help, her eyes filled with tears of gratitude, she scrambled up from the floor and stood behind me. The man, not daring to provoke me, scurried away. Sincere, thank you. She wrung her hands, her voice trembling, likely from fear. I was just passing by and happened to see you. You should be more careful in the future, she called out to me again, jogging to catch up. There's a batch of raw materials from when you were still working there, still in the warehouse. Since all the contracts were canceled, they were never delivered. You inspected them yourself, so the quality is guaranteed. Sincere, would you be willing to help me one more time? I promise this is the last time. If you buy these products under the Clark Corporation's name, you won't lose anything, but you could save my life. She clung to me like a drowning person to a lifeline, unwilling to let go. That's when Claire walked up to my side and linked her arm through mine affectionately. What's going on? Aren't you going to introduce me to your friend? 23. Victoria looked up, bewildered, her eyes darting between me and Claire. Even I was taken aback, completely unprepared for her move. But I quickly recovered and introduced them coolly. Victoria Smith, my ex-wife. I knew Claire was doing it on purpose, because she had just told me she'd seen Victoria before, so there was no way she didn't recognize her now. Victoria quickly wiped the tears from her eyes and asked in a muffled voice, "Sincere, who is she?" "Miss Smith, haven't you figured out our relationship by now? We're dating. To be more precise, we've already met each other's parents." Victoria's eyes widened as she stared at me in disbelief. "Is what she's saying true? Sincere, we've only been divorced for half a month. Are you already this desperate to find someone new?" I couldn't answer her accusation. The fact was, I had indeed started going on dates right after our divorce. I remained silent, but Claire leaned her head on my shoulder and continued her stinging remarks. "Miss Smith, you can't put it like that. Since you're divorced, why doesn't Sincere have the right to find a new girlfriend? Besides, from what I understand, the reason your marriage ended was because you cheated on him, wasn't it? It's getting late, I'll take you home now." I was worried that if they kept talking, a fight would break out in the restaurant, so I quickly took Claire's hand. Seeing this, she didn't say anything more and obediently left with me. I drove her home. Before she got out of the car, she suddenly turned to me. "Did what I said to Victoria make you angry? No. I should be thanking you. If Claire hadn't appeared to help me out, I probably wouldn't have gotten away so easily." After that scene, Victoria probably wouldn't bother me again. She slowly unbuckled her seatbelt, and as if to ensure I didn't think her earlier words were just a joke, she repeated them. "My feelings for you are real. No matter how long it takes, I will wait for you. And if you need someone to help you deal with your family's pressure, I can help with that too." Just as she pushed the car door open, I called out to her, "Maybe we could give it a try." 24, she froze, turning to look at me with wide, incredulous eyes. "Are you serious? I never joke about things like this." The next second, she threw her arms around my neck, her voice thick with excitement. "Thank you." I watched her go inside before driving home. As soon as I walked in the door, my mother was on me, asking how it went. I nodded. "I think I'd like to date her for a while and see. I'll let you know if there are any new developments. I knew you two had chemistry. I really liked that girl, which is why I put her photo on top. See? My judgment is never wrong." I gave her a weary look. I had thought my reunion with Claire was purely fate, but it turned out there was a bit of manipulation involved. After that day, Claire and I stayed in constant contact, but because of my busy work schedule, my replies were often sporadic. She, however, seemed even busier. As a prominent lawyer, she was often flying between countries. Several times I tried to ask her out to dinner, only to be told she wasn't even in the country. As a result, though we had been officially a couple for a month, we had only seen each other twice. One of those times was when I drove her to the airport. But it was fine this way. I could pour all my energy into my work, without worrying that the lingering shadow of my last relationship would affect her. My parents, on the other hand, were getting anxious. I tried to reason with them, but they wouldn't listen. In the blink of an eye, it was New Year's again. I remembered last New Year's Eve. I had meticulously prepared a feast, wanting to celebrate with Victoria. But she used work as an excuse and rushed out before even taking a bite. I had followed her, intending to surprise her at the office, only to see her drive straight to the riverfront, where she spent the entire night setting off fireworks with Ethan. How things change in a year. This New Year's Eve, Claire made a special trip back from abroad. She wore a snow-white down jacket and a white woolly hat, looking like a little snowman. She handed me a bag of roasted chestnuts. "Here, try one. They're still warm." I looked at the smile on her lips, and my heart skipped a beat. Just as fireworks lit up the sky, I took the engagement ring I had prepared from my pocket and knelt on one knee. "Claire Taylor, will you marry me?" In the 6 months we had been together, though we were often apart, we never lost contact. Sometimes we would have video calls while we both worked late. When she had time, she would invite me to court to be in the audience. She was actively inviting me into her life, bit by bit, and in the process I slowly got to know her. I found myself charmed by her little clumsy moments in life, and I started learning her likes and habits. I truly enjoyed our time together. I thought I was more than willing to try and build a marriage with her. Just as she had said before, if I didn't bravely take that step, I would forever be trapped in the memories of the past, unable to break free. Claire covered her mouth, her face a picture of pure joy. She nodded like a pecking chicken and immediately held out her right hand. We embraced in the snow and kissed under the fireworks, and I felt hope for the future rekindle within me. 25. After we made our commitment, everything moved at lightning speed. In just 3 days, our parents had set a wedding date. Our wedding was scheduled for early March. In the month leading up to the wedding, Claire became incredibly busy. I knew she was trying to clear her schedule for the ceremony and honeymoon, so she was handling all her work in advance. Therefore, everything from the venue decorations to the guest list was managed by me. The night before the wedding, I received an unexpected call from Victoria. I hesitated for a long time before finally answering. She didn't speak. Through the receiver, I could only hear her faint breathing and the occasional sniffle. "If there's nothing, I'm hanging up." "Wait." Victoria finally spoke. She sounded drunk, her words slurred. "Ethan's case is closed. He was sentenced to 10 years. He was just using me from the very beginning, and I fell for it. I let him fool me. Sincere, if I had never let Ethan into the company in the first place, would we still have ended up like this?" I didn't answer. There are no second chances in life. Even if it hadn't been Ethan, it would have been some other man. She would have eventually cast me aside for someone else. "It's late, you should get some rest." Before I hung up, I heard her whisper, "I'm sorry, I wish you happiness." I didn't reply. I just silently blocked and deleted her number. The chapter of our relationship was finally completely closed. From now on, we would be like two parallel lines, never to cross again. That night, I slept surprisingly well until my alarm woke me in the morning. I put on my groom's suit, picked up the bouquet, and set off to meet my bride. On the way to the hotel, I saw a news report about Victoria declaring her company bankrupt. She was now $5 million in debt, and her whereabouts were unknown. Many creditors were looking for her. As for the assets I had taken from our divorce, they had all been donated to impoverished mountain regions. When making the donation, I had the person in charge change the donor's name to Victoria Smith. It was, in a way, her contribution to those children in need. As the news report ended, our wedding convoy arrived at the hotel. This time, per Claire's wishes, we didn't have a large ceremony. We invited some family, friends, and old high school classmates. During the vows, she looked at me deeply. "To be honest, I still feel like this is all a dream. I can't believe I actually get to marry you." I held her hand and smiled gently. "Well, if it's a dream, it's one that has come true. Are you happy?" She nodded vigorously, squeezing my hand tightly in return. The ceremony went smoothly. It wasn't until the bouquet toss at the end that I thought I saw a familiar figure at the entrance of the banquet hall. It looked like Victoria. But before I could get a clear look, the figure was gone. All that was left was a red envelope on the gift table. On it, in Victoria's handwriting, were the words, "I hope you will be happy." After the wedding, Claire and I went to Bali for our honeymoon. We walked hand in hand along the beach at sunset. We felt like an old married couple, deeply in love. She told me she had been following my marriage to Victoria for years and had noticed Ethan's presence even before I did. She had even tried to hint at it during a class reunion, but I had been too dense to pick up on it. I smiled. I guess that's just fate, but I was grateful that, in the end, fate had led me to Claire. My parents adored her and were constantly urging us to have a child while we were still young. I didn't want to pressure Claire, so I always gave them a vague answer. Our married life was incredibly harmonious. She tried to limit her international travel and would take the initiative to cook for me on weekends. Though we usually made a mess of the kitchen, it was our own special kind of fun. 6 months later, I made another donation to the same impoverished region. Since supplies needed to be delivered, I took some time off to visit the area with Claire. In a place called Lanecroft Village, I saw that the woman teaching the children to sing at the local school was Victoria. I felt a sense of dislocation, realizing how long it had been since I'd last thought of her. She was smiling, teaching the children musical notes, and didn't notice us standing outside the door. The school principal saw us and explained, "That's Teacher Smith. She came here about 6 months ago. She said she had nowhere else to go, and the old village chief took her in. We saw that she could sing and had nice handwriting, so we let her teach music and reading at the school. She's a very kind person, always buying snacks for the kids in her class. I can tell she's been through a lot, but that's her private life, and I have no right to ask. As long as she's good to the children, she's welcome here. I nodded, not wanting to disturb the peaceful scene in the classroom. After a brief tour, I declined the principal's offer to hold a recognition ceremony for me, and not wanting to encounter Victoria, Claire and I headed home that same afternoon. On the way back, as I watched the golden rapeseed flowers in the fields flash by, my mind was filled with 1,000 thoughts. I think we had both finally walked out of the shadow of the past and started to find a new direction in life. Both Victoria and me